Well, hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Burton. I'm the David B. Falk Professor of Sport Management at Syracuse University, and this is part of our massive open online course that I guess many of you have been going through. Hopefully you've enjoyed the previous episodes that we've had. And I hope you actually are having a good time, the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately, we're not likely to have any one-on-one relationship, but I can ask you how you are, and I can tell you that I've spent the last month in Australia, and my students here are now giving me a hard time about my long hair and the fact that I need to get a haircut, and if you were in a classroom with me, you could do the same. The interesting thing that I ran into while I was down in Australia was a situation where a team had actually been involved in, it appears, and we'll use that language because either for legal reasons or just because it's appropriate to be diplomatic, appeared to have been giving its players drugs without the players actually knowing what the drug was. The big issue involved now in Australian football is kind of the responsibility of the team in trying to enhance the performance of its players. Now, today's class is actually coming to you from a baseball stadium. And what makes that interesting is, as we kind of walk out to the field, coming from the dugout, is that in American Major League Baseball, we've actually had a number of players who were recently suspended. And one player is actually challenging his suspension and still playing. You may be familiar with his name, Alex Rodriguez. He plays for the New York Yankees. And what's interesting is that Major League Baseball has a rule that allows them to allow him to continue to play while he appeals what appears to be a likely suspension, possibly, for performance-enhancing drugs. A number of other players have already accepted their punishment and have been banned or have been sat down now for a period of probation. Alex is still playing. My issue today is not really with whether or not Alex has used drugs or not, but as much to talk to you about the fact that we can't have a discussion about modern sport management or sports marketing without realizing that a lot of times the athletes who are involved with sports are going to be caught doing something that they shouldn't have done. Now, in one of our earlier episodes, we talked about recovery marketing, how you recover from a situation like that. And it varies by case, by sport, by geography of where you may be taking this class from or the sports that you may be familiar with. But what I want to get into today is perhaps maybe even your own ethical thinking and how you view the concept of right and wrong. Now, if we were in a classroom together, I'd give you an assignment. I'd actually say to you, I want you to write down an occasion where you know you did something wrong. Maybe you cheated on a test. Maybe you stole something. Maybe you lied. And for a lot of us, I think the psychologists and social thinkers would probably tend to say that most of us, by and large, are good people. Most of us know right from wrong. And it can't be for me to tell you what's right or what's wrong. But what's interesting is if you were writing down that occasion where you actually broke the law or where you did something that you knew was wrong, how you felt about that, and whether there was a situation where you felt like you should keep doing that again or you said to yourself, I'm never going to do that ever again. Now, we know in a situation like Lance Armstrong, the cyclist, that Lance told everyone for years and years that he was clean, that he wasn't using drugs, that his victories in the Tour de France were all legitimate, and anyone who accused him of using drugs was a liar and that they were out to get him. And a number of years go by, and finally he comes to a point where he says, no, I was the one who was lying and I was using the drugs. Now, what's interesting to me on that subject is not so much that Lance was using the drugs, but how many other people in his inner circle knew that. Were there a lot of people, let's say, associated with his sponsors that might have known, that might have guessed that he was involved? And at what point was someone supposed to step forward and say, this is wrong? We've had situations in the American sports landscape recently where this has kind of very much been a topic that has bothered people. We had an institution, a major university in the American sports system, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, where a retired assistant coach appeared to have been abusing young men in the locker room. And an assistant coach saw it and he reported it, but others may not have done enough. So one of the questions that we always face with ethics is, am I doing enough? And are the people around me being inspired to do enough also? And what happens when I stumble into a situation where I absolutely know the wrong thing is being done? Am I going to be afraid to actually tell someone because I think I might lose my job? Am I willing to actually quit my job because I know the wrong thing is happening? Well, it's easy for me to stand here and kind of mention that to you, to say that, hey, it's a problem. You need to go forward. You need to report that. If that instance was happening to your sister, to your brother, to someone who is close to you in your family, wouldn't you take a hard stand? And yet in the sports world, we know for a fact that the rules get broken all the time. And we're not talking just about drugs. We know that there have been situations like with Tiger Woods, where it appears that he broke the relationship that he had with his wife at the time and was involved in a great deal of infidelity. Again, it's not for me to cast judgment, but I do think there were probably a lot of people who knew about that, who had a chance to maybe say, this isn't right. And this will come back to bite us at some point. So let me pause here for a moment. I don't want to try and put too much on you right now, and I don't want to come across as being holier than thou or being too righteous. But let me put up these questions for you on the screen and actually have you think about them for a minute. So the questions that you see on the screen in front of you are part of a research project that I'm working on with a professor from Central Washington University named Mark Pritchard. And what you see there are, question number one, what are ethics? And where do we see ethical breaches today? Question two, why are personal ethics important in sports business? Question three, which theories inside the discovery of ethics help explain how we make ethical decisions? And the last one, what factors shape your ethics and your response to moral dilemmas? Now, I can tell you for a fact that a lot of us see things that are ethically inappropriate, and we see them a lot of the time. And it's hard for sport management and sports marketing courses to actually teach ethics, because who's to say what's right and what's wrong? This is a book that I've used before called Sport Marketing. Three great professors, Bernie Mullen, Stephen Hardy, and Bill Sutton, put this together, and I've used it many, many times. But if you go to the index of this book and you look up the word ethics, there's only 2 pages dedicated to the discussion of ethics. And that is from an early edition of this book. But it may help explain that inside sports marketing, it's tricky for us to actually get our hands around ethical pieces. Let me read a couple more things to you, 3 quotes that we've used inside of this research that we're doing. Goodness is easier to recognize than to define. Think about that. Goodness is easier to recognize than to define. The second quote we use from Ralph Waldo Emerson is, a man's action is only a picture book of his creed. And of course we can make that gender neutral by saying that a woman's action is only a picture book of her creed. And the last one, from a guy from about 2,000 years ago, a guy named Paul of Tarsus, said, if anyone competes as an athlete, he does not receive the victor's crown unless he competes according to the rules. Now, what makes the discussion of the rules really interesting is if everybody's clear on what the rules are, why do we have so many occasions where the rules are broken? And why do we think that the rule breaking is only done by the athletes, the players out on the field, as opposed to possibly being done by the people that run the leagues, or possibly being done by the people who own the teams or manage the teams? Now, that's not a condemnation of everyone in sport, and I think, as many of you know, I used to serve as the commissioner of a professional basketball league down in Australia. And I know that a lot of times that people think that things are rigged by the league, in actual fact, to try and create a situation where the league might benefit. I'll give you a perfect example. I hear it a lot of the times that whichever team gets the first pick in a lottery draft, and in a lot of leagues they use ping pong balls, and the commissioner will reach in and grab out a ping pong ball and say, and the first draft will go to, and whoever that ball happens to represent, whichever team it is, that someone will say, oh, that was rigged. The league wanted that team to get the best player coming into the league. So we actually have suspicions that people are cheating, and it probably runs all the way up through every sport organization. So we come back to, how do we know what you're going to do when you're faced with a situation? Now, as part of what I've been discussing, I suggested that a lot of our familiarity with breached ethics was associated with athletes. But look at these numbers on the screen right now from research done by Marchetti in 1997, and it involved a survey of 200 sales managers. Now, it doesn't really matter to us perhaps whether or not the sale was of any particular item. Let's just assume that these are sales managers selling a product. 49% of the surveyed managers said their reps lied on a sales call. 34% said they've heard reps make unrealistic promises on a sales call. 22% said their reps have sold products their customers didn't need. 30% said customers have demanded a kickback for buying their product or service. 54%, more than half the people, say the drive to meet sales goals did a disservice to their customers. And the last statistic there, 27% said that they have caught employees cheating on an expense report. We know that there's graft in business. We know that there's corruption all around us. But how does that affect you as an individual? And again, I have to laugh because I can't make you make the right decision. I can only ask, do you have a personal set of ethics? Now, it may be driven by your religion. It may be driven by the way you were raised by your parents or the guardians that helped bring you of age. But who actually determines right and wrong? And I'm not sure that it's fair for any of us, me or you, to put that off on someone else, to say, well, I'm only following the rules made by someone else. Back to that concept of the golden rule, well, he or she owns the company, so he or she gets to make the rules, and I'm just doing what everybody else does. Somewhere along the way in your career, you're going to have to say, I'm lying to our customers, and I'm going to stop. Or my customers are asking something of me that I can't do. It may not happen today, it may not happen in your career ever, it may not happen for 20 years. But my sense is with most of us, you'll face that, and you'll face it sooner than later. There was a famous sports writer a long, long time ago named Grantland Rice. And you'll see on the screen right now in front of you that he wrote one time back in 1941, imagining that there was a great scorer in the sky, kind of, who would review your life. And his quote was, "For when the one great scorer comes to write against your name, he marks not that you won or lost, but how you played the game." An interesting concept that somewhere ultimately it may not be about the winning or losing you're doing in the short term, it's going to be about how you conducted yourself. Let me give you something from 1992. Badaracco spoke about the fact that fundamentally simple approaches to hard moral choices are beguilingly clear, simple, praiseworthy, and misleading. The search for some grand unifying principle of management morality leads to frustration and often to cynicism. So in simplifying a discussion of right and wrong, I can also actually create a lot of problems for you, as was just suggested in the material you saw on the screen. If I oversimplify it and say, do the right thing, I can actually frustrate you because you may not know what the right thing is. And it'll introduce then, who are you going to turn to ask, am I doing the right thing? Who do you trust to have a sense of right from wrong? Where a lot of us go is we turn to the companies we work for. And I'd like to read to you an example from a company that I'm pretty familiar with and an individual that I've talked to before personally. And that's Phil Knight, the chairman and founder of Nike. And this was what Nike said to its employees as recently as 2011. And it was called A Message from Phil. He said, "At Nike, we are on the offense always. We play hard, we play to win, and we play by the rules of the game. This code of ethics is vitally important. It contains the rules of the game for Nike, the rules we live by and what we stand for. Please read it. And if you've read it before, read it again. Then take some time to think about what it says and make a commitment to play by it. Defining the Nike playing field ensures no matter how dynamic and challenging Nike may be, our actions and decisions fit with our shared values." Now, I can't sit here and tell you anything about whether everyone at Nike is ethical. or whether everyone at Nike does the right thing. But I can tell you that I admire Phil Knight and always have, and believe that his company has a strong moral compass. Now, many of you may think that Nike did this or Nike did that, and you can't believe what I'm saying. That's fine. That's for you to choose what you believe. But I do think that it's an example, at least having read to you what Phil Knight has said to all of his employees, that they have rules, they have standards that they want to try and live by. And I've got to believe that if a Nike employee came forward to his or her manager or director or vice president and said, hey, I think I've uncovered a situation where we're not consistent with what Phil Knight said about how we play the game and how we live by the rules, and I want to come forward and say that. And if it costs me my job or it costs me a promotion, I at least want to know that when I go to bed tonight, I did what I perceived to be the right thing based on what my company told me to do. So some of you may be entrepreneurs. You may have to create the rules for yourselves. Some of you are going to work for big organizations that are going to seem like they don't care about you in the slightest. My hope is that as you get to a position where you are faced with an ethical choice, you actually have the opportunity to think about what you would do, should do, and whether or not the organization has given you an ability to actually do the right thing. There's an old joke in our family. We used to say to different members that they were outstanding in a field, and what we really generally meant was that they were outstanding in a field. That's where I've been for most of this discussion today, or down in the dugout, talking about a subject that makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But I think what's fun for us in having the discussion is that it allows you to own your own sense of what's right and what's wrong, and it allows you to own your sense of ethical decision making. You see all around you in almost every sport, in every country in the world, things that you know are wrong. Athletes coming forward admitting they've made mistakes. Teams making choices that endangered their players. And I think that all of us have at least got to attempt to make the world a better place. And that sounds like so much pablum. But I think ultimately, if I were going to try and teach you, if you were in a class sitting with me face to face, I'd be saying virtually the same thing to you. We've got to make good choices, and we've got to make choices influenced largely by doing the better thing for the most people. I hope you've enjoyed today's session. I'm Rick Burton, David Falk, Professor of Sport Management at Syracuse University, and you've been part of our massive open online education program. We'll see you in the next episode. We'll try and give you some homework or maybe a final exam.